Welcome to the 7th instalment of the Performance Gap. I'm your host, Sami Hussein, and today we're going to be bringing on Jake Caradoc, rugby S&C coach working with amateur and semi-professional athletes. Today we're going to be discussing all things endurance, from Jake's anecdotal experience of his Ironman training to performance indicators of ultra events and the mindset that goes behind the event itself. Let's jump in. Jake, what's the performance gap in endurance sports?
Performance gap, as in where can you get the most performance, or where people are missing the most performance, or what do you mean by the performance gap?
Yes, very good question. I guess firstly, where does your head go straight away? But more so, what is the missing link?
So I would say where my head goes straight away with performance gap is what are most people not doing, or maybe doing wrong, that they could change, that's going to give them the biggest improvement in performance. And for endurance, I think what a lot of people get wrong is the fueling. And this is something that I've learned firsthand doing my Ironman training, is that I have managed to hold on to a massive amount of muscle with hardly any resistance training. And I've been able to do 15 hours of cardio a week, and I've managed to hold on to that muscle and perform and make a big improvement in my endurance because of the nutrition. And the nutrition around the training sessions are important, but the intra workout, or the nutrition that you're taking on inside those sessions, I think that's the biggest thing for people who are doing like exercise longer than an hour.
Right. Okay. And I guess sticking on that, in your anecdotal experience, when you say you've kept your muscle mass, is that led to the gym side of things? So like performance and strength, has that differed much, or you found there's a gap?
Just based on how I'm looking at my body weight, I'm judging that on. So inside the gym, like for the last 3 to 4 months or so, I've probably averaged about an hour or maybe less of strength or full-on resistance training in the gym per week. So sometimes it's just half an hour session a week. Sometimes it's 2 lots of 45 minutes, something like that. And for me to be in a bit of a calorie deficit and still seemingly hold on to all of that muscle whilst doing 15, 14-hour training weeks of cardio, that's been a big surprise to me. It's hard for me to judge my strength in the gym because I'm going there for different reasons. I'm not going in there to, see what my 3-rep max back squat is. So the training's been a little bit different. I think that the strength overall would have gone down in that situation. And there will have been some muscle loss, but I'm just very surprised at how little there has been.
And yeah, that's quite an interesting mark, because everyone seems to think cardio is a wasted gains away. Let's talk a little bit about your Ironman training, because I'm actually quite keen to hear more about it. So when did this start? Like, take me back to the beginning. Like, first of all, where the mindset, you're by trade rugby S&C coach. How did the Ironman come about?
Honestly, it was pretty random. Some guy that I was, kind of friends with, gym buddies with, Owen, was just like, I think we'd seen quite a few people around the gym who had done some Ironmans, half Ironmans. I was in Cardiff at the time, or my gym's in Cardiff. Swansea half Ironman, which is the one that I've booked on to do, which is in 11 days.
Countdown's on.
The countdown is on big time, tapering now. I'm sure we'll get into that, but yeah, he was just basically like, so when are we booking this Ironman now? And it was just literally out of nowhere. And so he said it a few times, and I was like, all right, fine. And like you said, my background had been, I played rugby. I haven't actually competed in anything since COVID. So I was a little bit lost, if I'm honest. I was training to look good, perform good, and to ultimately make content so that I could demonstrate exercises, be powerful, be fast, look good for the content and perform good for the content. And I just wasn't cutting it for me. So I needed something to compete in. And yeah, that was in September. So I started training then started doing more cardio. At that point, I'd ran a half marathon, and I'd done a couple of little endurance things just by myself, but I didn't have a road bike. I had swam a tiny bit, but I'd never gone in and gone, I'm going to do a structured or consistent swim session. So I was pretty new to it all and had to learn on the job. But that was in September. And then I've just picked it up, added the volume, taken it more seriously every single month up until now.
Awesome to hear. It's obviously, for those that don't know, you've almost got your coach account in terms of your rugby, and then you've got your second account when you've been posting loads of content about what you've been doing, and you've been flying through the volume of the week. And I guess so. How for you being an S&C coach and a rugby S&C coach, how did your knowledge and application change slightly to the endurance? Obviously, completely different demand. Talk to me a little bit about kind of the process behind you building, because I take it you programmed your own block, or did you get some help with that?
Yeah, all myself. So, at the end of the day, I think if you've got a really good understanding of anatomy and physiology and biomechanics, I'm of the belief that if you apply yourself and you do the research to the specific sport, you can very quickly become pretty good at coaching that sport as a strength and conditioning coach. So I've coached lots of athletes before in a range of disciplines or sports for different events. Now, this is obviously on the extreme end. So I had to change quite a lot. The biggest thing really was that, almost like when you have your high rocks and your CrossFit and you're training people for that, the training method is a big part of the sport. So in rugby, let's just say you want to get somebody strong, or like 90% of the exercises that you're doing in the gym or the conditioning or whatever is to elicit an adaptation, which is then going to help them out on the pitch. And of course, you need to do that in CrossFit, in high rocks, in triathlon, but the training method is also the sport at the same time. So there's a lot more specificity there, and it means that you can get a lot more specific with the sessions. So you don't quite have to be as general, if that makes sense. Now, because they kind of both, they're both general and specific. I did it all myself, and honestly, the main driver of performance for something like this is just volume. It is just volume. And how can you accumulate more volume? Well, you do more time, but then you run into recovery issues. So you do more time at lower intensities. So, what I kind of worked out was, if you have more time, you end up doing more lower intensity volume. If you have like 3 or 4 hours a week, that 3 or 4 hours is probably going to look very similar to the higher intensity sessions that a professional or somebody with 15, 20 hours a week might do, but they've then padded it out with this zone 1 to zone 2 training that makes things a little bit easier. So my first changes in my training was, well, let's get those key high intensity sessions in there, and then just start adding, 15 minutes, half an hour every session or every week, until I got up to consistently 10, 12, 13, 14 hours of total training volume. And that's where I am now.
Awesome. And that's a great insight into kind of, firstly, how you've built up your training. But I want to bring you back to that point you mentioned about how, and I think I've got this along the same lines of, it's more of a physical demand that associates with performance. Whereas in your multi-direction sports, rugby, there is a skill element or skill acquisition element to it, where you're responding to external stimulus. I guess for you, there's the skill in itself, and I'd be interested to know, now you've not just programmed, but you're actually doing it yourself. The skill component is about the application. So your actual training modality and how you structure is more of an emphasis on that.
Yeah. So Yeah, I guess so. You can, it like you said, there's less of a skill component, but it's also more one-dimensional in general. So there's a lot of physical qualities in rugby that you need to have at a pretty high level, and they all need to be that way. Whereas in something a little bit more endurance based, from the strength side of things, you only need a very little. From the power side of things, You only need very little. So there's like a lot more of an emphasis on that base aerobic endurance and that side of things compared to everything else. So it can be a whole lot more focused in that area. And once you get to a certain level, it's just about maintaining it or doing stuff to keep you out of injury, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely does. I guess the other side is what we would deem as the key performance indicators will be slightly different. Now, you said you'd had a look into research, but I'll be actually intrigued to know in an Ironman, what's the kind of current literature saying about what the key performance indicators are, and how have you personally gone about developing them based upon your background as well?
Yeah, so I'll be completely honest. I've strayed further away from the research for stuff like this because there just isn't that much, right? You've got to draw things from other endurance events, and you've got to look at what the professionals are doing or what the high level age group athletes are doing. So in Ironman or in long course triathlon, you've got the age groupers, which is basically everybody is grouped into an age category, and then you'll get ranked in that age category. So you might come first, second, third, 100th out of that age group, but you might only have came 420th overall. But you have the age groupers, so then you might have the top end of the age groupers, and then you've got your professionals that get paid to do it. But if you look at what they're doing, the main things that honestly that everybody talks about is like volume of training. So you will pretty much see that the vast majority, at least of the top professionals, are doing. I mean, I'm not sure if you know. Do you want to guess how many hours of training that they're doing each week?
For an Ironman, I want to say it's got to be touching 20 potentially,
35 to 40. So
full-time job.
Full-time job. So it's a crazy amount of training. And Christian Blumenfeld, the Norwegians, they are absolutely dominating endurance sports in general at the moment, but specifically in the long course and Ironman triathlons. But he talks about sickness weeks. So if he does like 20 hours, that's when he's ill. So that would be like a maintenance or just kind of keep things ticking along. So it's ridiculous amounts of training, which is why you need a fair amount of that to be in that lower zone 1 to 2, because you can't replenish that many carbohydrates. You can't recover from that much. But so that's one of the key things. What a lot of people focus on is the cycling. So the cycling and the running. The swimming tends to be very technique based. So that's got this biggest skill component in a sport like triathlon. So you can be really, really, really fit, but you can hardly swim at all because you don't have the technique. Whereas you can muscle and push your way through both the run and definitely the cycle as well. What people measure a lot are your speeds or your outputs at certain lactate levels. So we have two lactate thresholds. You have your LT1 and you have your LT2. Your LT1 is like where you get, if we want to put it on a normal 5-zone heart rate model, it might be the end of that zone 2. So then once you cross that, your lactate starting to rise above baseline. Then you have this gap between LT1 and LT2. So your second lactate threshold. And then that's where basically you're at a ticking time bomb, and that is your threshold and VO2 max, and that's where lactate just gets away from you, and you can't control it and bring it back down at that intensity. So what a lot of the time people are measuring and trying to improve is their watts that they can produce on the bike at those thresholds and the running speeds that they can produce at those thresholds. And those are some of the key things that people are basing their training prescriptions around, but also looking at measuring to see their performance.
Right, I see. Yeah, I'm starting to get a picture because at the run club that I'm at, there's a couple of Ironman like triathletes, and they talk about kind of pacing at certain, and a lot, obviously, a predominance of their volume is in that kind of low, very low zone 1, zone 2, even before kind of LT1. And it's intriguing because a couple of them, they'll talk about their numbers specifically. I'm none the wiser of that, but I can see how you can gamify a lot. The one thing that comes to mention I'd be keen to know for you is there's almost a tactics around the individual elements of it, where some people are better at the swim and others are better at the run or bike. I guess for yourself, does that come into the picture a little bit for you, or is it because it's the first time, are you just going on complete fresh plate?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. If you're thinking about your time, then that it's one of the first things to think about. So for people that maybe don't know, that the half Ironman, in terms of the distances, it's 1.9 kilometer swim. Then you've got your transition. So you go from take off your wetsuit, get into your bike gear. And then it's a 90 kilometer bike ride at Swansea. It's got quite a bit of elevation for one of those courses. So it's about 1,100 meters of elevation as well. And then you have your second transition. You get off your bike, you get into your run stuff, put on your shoes, and you run for a half marathon. So 21.1 kilometers or something around there. So my target time is I want to see if I can do it under 5 hours. That was something that I set that was pretty, in terms of like a smart target, in terms of attainable, like people would listen to it and go, good luck. Like, it's possible, but the chances are slim. But that's what I needed to wake me up in the morning, to set and to get up, and it absolutely lit a fire up my arse. So if I didn't set something like that, I would have been able to complete it. And that's me saying that like I've already done it. I'm very confident I'm going to be able to complete it, but I'm going to complete it so much faster, even if I don't get that 5 hours, than if I had said, I'm just going to train to complete it. I wouldn't have pushed as hard. I've completely forgotten what we were talking about just before we went into this, because I wanted to bring it back to that.
Yeah, it was the difference between each predominant event.
Right. Yes. So the bike takes up the vast majority of the whole thing. So my time on the bike's probably going to be, I'm aiming for about 2 hours 40, let's say. The half marathon is going to be about 1 hour 40, and the swim about 33 minutes. So it's such a small percentage. So then you look at that and you go, if I improve my swim by 10%, my bike by 10%, or my run by 10%, how does that impact my overall time? Well, 10% on the swim's not even gonna get you a minute. So, it's hardly going to get you anything, a few minutes. 10% on the bike, now that's quite a lot. Now you're looking at like 10 plus minutes, and 10% on the run, a little bit less. So pump more of the time and the focus into the bike as a whole. Now, the second reason that you do that is that cycling is the easiest way to accumulate more volume. And I've always thought about this before I even did Ironman Triathlon. What do people always do from almost every single sport? They go, how am I going to improve my fitness? Okay, I don't want to do loads more running because it's impactful. I'm going to do some off-feet conditioning. So rowing, cycling. So pretty much every sport, if you look at runners, they cycle. If you look at cyclists, they cycle. They don't tend to run. If you look at rugby players, you'll get them doing cycling. So everybody comes towards cycling, and even more so in triathlon. So 60, sometimes 70% of your overall training for the week often goes towards cycling. And that can massively improve your running as well, which maybe I'll talk about later on. But I have ran maybe 40 kilometers in the last 4 months, and I hit a huge 10 kilometer PB, 15 kilometer PB, multiple PBs, and I'm a better runner than I've ever been before, purely because I focus on the cycling.
That's interesting. That's really interesting, because I can understand why and the mechanisms at play. And I think you typically think there's going to be coming from an S&C's point of view, a modality effect, in terms of if you are running, like you will get the adaptations, whether it's peripheral or central, based upon the modality you're doing it. Now, obviously from a bike perspective, it sounds like there's more peripheral, which basically means there's more limb developments at the muscular level, or the working muscle, rather than cardiovascular. I guess for you, that you found that from an anecdotal experience, but then also as well, it'd be interesting to see kind of how you, realizing that, how that's developed and adapted your training. And if we can get super tactical in a few things that you've done, you've changed, and you've adapted your program in.
Sure. So I think what a lot of people will realize when they first start cycling is, like you said, it feels very peripheral. So it's a very different method of training to running, because you've got like this constant tension going through your muscles, and it can be quite hypoxic. So the blood isn't necessarily, your muscles are always contracting, and if you're not conditioned to it, that muscular endurance isn't quite there. So for a good couple of months, my legs were always massively the limiting factor, and I really struggled to get my heart rate up. As with a lot of things, when you're doing training, you'll do training, the limiting factor will get trained the most and other things not so much, but then that comes up to par and then it becomes a bit more central. So I actually found that after my legs adapted to cycling itself, I could get a really good central stimulus to my cardiovascular system. And that's where the gains came, because I was able to improve the overall power that I could produce, or the amount of work that my legs could do at my lactate thresholds, so much that it carried over to my running. And you still get some peripheral adaptations on the cycling that's very useful for the running, right? You're still going to build the capillary, extra blood flow, capillarization, everything that you need inside the legs. You're just not getting the same adaptation in terms of like the eccentric loading and the tendons and the impact and everything. So there was a lot that carried over there, and that was the biggest thing really in terms of how you can take that and put that towards your training. The big thing is that you could do, let's just say that you're looking at getting a general stimulus or a specific stimulus to running. Specific stimulus might be, okay, 30 minutes of running. If I want to improve my ability to run for 30 minutes, I should do 30 minutes of running. That's probably the most specific that you can get. And that will give you a good stimulus for sure. But what if you do 30 minutes of running and you have 90 minutes of cycling, and the recovery demands are the same, but then you can do, I don't know, now you're comparing maybe an hour of running a week to 3 hours of cycling a week, and now it gets a little bit more blurred. From a time perspective, being more specific might help, but when we start talking about pure volume, that's where the cycling can come and help, because I was able to do 10 to 11 hours of cycling every single week and get no minimal soreness, no overuse injuries. I got overuse injury in my ankle from running, and that was from doing maybe 3 to 4 hours a week. So that's the biggest thing that I would say. You can almost do double plus the amount of volume for the cycling, which can really improve your overall fitness. And for me, with the way that I prescribe for my athletes and my rugby players a fair bit of lower intensity cycling anyway. And for me, the main thing that I've kind of changed over the last 6 months is just polarizing things a little bit more. So if on a Sunday, they've had a game on Saturday, and on Sunday they have a active recovery where I get them to do some off-feet conditioning, nice and easy. I maybe before would have prescribed that around zone 2. I actually think upper zone 1 to lower zone 2 would be better now. So just a little bit easier. And then maybe midweek, if they've also got some more off-feet conditioning, I'd say, okay, now let's push it to like the upper of zone 2. So just separating those a little bit more than maybe I did previously.
Right, yeah, I'm getting a picture. It's a lot to unpack there, but I think I can start to see how not just your anecdotal experience, but the parallels you're drawing to the development. And I think what you touched on the most about that is the modality and that's what I was thinking about is like from a run specific, it is very harsh on the body. I've just got over plantar fasciitis issue, kind of. I've had a few of my clients have little niggles here and there, but saying that, once you have accommodated to the volume, especially on-feet volume, you're good. And I think it's the same thing as you said with the bike. If you can get to that point where you can run for 3-4 hours volume per week and your body's good, you've made it, sort of thing. You can maintain that, but it's getting there. That's the issue. And it's really cool to see that you've almost, even though you probably have to do triple the volume in terms of time, you can almost short circuit that with bike work without the demand on the body. So yeah, the one thing I wanted to touch upon there I want to take you back to the beginning because you talked about why you did the Ironman. And I think you probably felt very similar to a lot of people, especially everyday athletes that feel. And that's the kind of having a goal, having an orientation. So it'd be interesting to know the mindset behind that and then kind of how that plays into moving towards that target of having that end goal and allowing you to wake up in the day and going, you know what, this is what I'm going to nail today and build into that momentum.
Yeah, it was like I always still follow, not systematically, but something like a SMART target. So you have to make sure that you actually know what you're working towards, make it specific enough. You don't want it to be too general. You want to be able to measure it, right? It's got to be something objective. Otherwise, you can just convince yourself that you've managed to hit that target or that you're working towards it. I like to have it. And I think a big important one is set something that is potentially out of reach. Like there's a fairly slim chance that you're going to be able to do it, because that like, you know that, and I know that every single day, and it really locks me in. And I've been through quite a lot in terms of like my like relationships, work, financial stuff over the last 6 to 9 months, and it has like really like grounded me and kept me going, because like I said, it's something where I can't push this further along. There is a date when this Swansea Ironman is, and I need to be ready for this date. And I know that if I was to miss 3 weeks, or I'm not going to bother this week, then potentially that goal is just gone. It just goes out of reach. And so it was just about setting something on a specific date that I want to work towards. And I mean, maybe it'd be interesting to see what my thoughts are after I've completed it, whether I manage to get my target, whether I just miss it, or whether I really badly miss it. But I've thought about each scenario, and I know what my answer is going to be. I'm going to do another one, or I'm going to do the full one, because if I don't quite get it, I've got to try again. If I really miss it, then I've got to prove to myself that I can do better. And if I get it, I'm going to be even happier. I'm going to want it. Exactly. So I should have set a bigger target. But yeah, I think it's really important that people have a clear goal. And it's really hard as an everyday athlete, which, you know, I kind of am at this point, because I'm not actually training in a sport. This is the first competition. But endurance sports and stuff like this, it's very easy to just go, because there's no barrier to entry, as in, oh, you have to be at this certain level already.
Still involved. Inherently, not skill, but
like if you want to, it's just very objective as well, because here's the race and here's your time. Did you complete it? Yes or no? And I think a lot of people, if they're struggling with motivation in their training, or to make lifestyle changes, because I might talk about this in a bit, but my lifestyle has completely changed around. As somebody who was already living a very healthy lifestyle, it is completely turned around to support all of this in the training that I'm doing. And it wouldn't have happened if I didn't pick this goal. So enter yourself, if you're listening to this, enter yourself into a race. Like, pick a date, pick a race, and do it, because nothing is going to light a fire up your ass more than doing it.
I can't agree more with you than that. Most of my clients, within the first 4 months, we will come to a point and be like, cool, fine, what is the goal for the year? Like, what are we going to aim towards? And because it's not all about being kind of or outcome orientated, but that, like, as you said, it lights a fire up your ass and it gives you something to aim towards. And that extra bit of momentum is so massive. We'll jump into that a little bit, because I'm intrigued, because you sound very much like, when I speak to my clients, we have phase review calls every 2 months. And a lot of the conversations talk about is the mental shift, the mindset, and the structure around life. It almost center them. I'd be keen to hear about, because as before you did this, you had some level of structure, discipline towards your fitness. How has that changed, and what have you found different with the mentality you hold now?
So I was kind of coasting before, I'll be honest. I was able to, do maybe 5 hours of training a week. And because of my job as a coach, I can kind of do that whenever I want to. So I was just doing it at like 11 o'clock, which is great. I've got the ability to do that. but it made me soft and it made me lazy, if I'm completely honest. I mean, I don't set alarms now, but haven't really set alarms, but I'm waking up a lot earlier than I was before. But, you know, the nights were creeping on a little bit, and it was bedtime after 12 o'clock, and it was, you know, not waking up at 9:30, and things were just getting a little bit delayed. And doing something like this, where I've got to consistently do double training days, like a morning and an evening, you know, you have to change that lifestyle. So my sleep and bedtimes changed a lot. And sleep and bedtimes alone, it's amazing how forcing yourself to go to bed early helps you make better decisions, because you're not doing stuff later on in the evening. You're more conscious about maybe what you're eating, and I just feel a whole lot more productive as a whole. The same things in terms of any choices that I've made with my nutrition. I'm more conscious of, okay, I have to be, well, I don't have to be, but if I am carrying any extra weight, if I'm eating something that I don't necessarily need, although I'm burning off a lot of it, the closer that I've got to this competition, the stricter that I've been, but actually the easier that it's been, because, you know, people always talk about like discipline and motivation, and I haven't got necessarily more disciplined. It might look like I've got more disciplined over the last 3 months, but I've just been more locked in. I've been more motivated. And so the discipline has come with that. It's like, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's been really hard for me to get up at 6 a.m. compared to 9. It was just as hard, in my opinion, for me to get up at 9 o'clock when my motivation was pretty low, compared to getting up at 6 o'clock now when I'm motivated, because it's ultimately just what you want to do.
Well, yeah, I was going to say exactly that. Discipline isn't doing things that are hard. It's doing things you don't want to do, essentially, and still kind of getting that outcome. That's really interesting, because I think the mental side is massive when you can start to shift your lifestyle around your training and have some order and structure, and really be like, as I said, almost be military in that sense of having things in order, because you have to almost. Awesome. This has been a really fantastic chat. Before we go, I like to get super tactical. So at the end of the podcast, I basically ask a question regarding kind of, if you were to take action now, what would that look like? So for this instance, Jake, if I woke up tomorrow and I wanted to sign up for an ultra, Ironman, what could I do in those 24 hours to set myself up in the right way? Couple key bullet points that you'd advise based upon your anecdotal experience as well as your own background.
So you're saying that if you were going to sign up for an event like this in the next 24 hours, what should you get in place right away?
Yeah, what's going to move the needle the quickest in the next 24 hours?
So, I mean, first thing would literally just be, like, within those 24 hours, sign up, get signed up, pick the date, have a look at it all. Where's it going to be? When is it going to be? What's the event? And then you can work backwards from that, because you've got an end goal, and you know what you need to work towards. And then you need to have a look at, where are you right now? Because I always talk about, and this is how I work with my athletes, that training is the journey that takes you from where you are right now to where you want to be. And you need to have that where you want to be, because you need to know that destination. And we've just got that, because we've had a look. When's the event? What is it? And of course, you need to think about, what qualities do I need in order, you know, to be able to complete that. And then you need to know where you are right now, because that training will then bridge that gap. Let's say that your event is in 9 months, because that's how long mine was. I think it's a real good idea to, in pretty much all sports, split yourself up into like a base phase, a build phase, and then a race phase. So your base phase, just as much general qualities as you can, probably loads of general aerobic endurance and building up the volume. Your build phase might be a little bit more specific. And then your race phase is very specific in terms of practicing your nutrition and the training and everything. So then you've got your race, you've got your current ability, where maybe you've done some tests and you've got a general idea about how you're going to get there. I think the next thing is, you really need to look at the equipment. That's something that took me by surprise with, like, some of the training, triathlon especially, because it's 3 disciplines. But, you know, you have to, okay, what do I need? I need For swimming, you need your goggles, your wetsuit, your swimsuit. For the whole triathlon, you need a triathlon suit, you need helmets, you need a bike, you need running trainers. You need to make a long kit list, and you'll probably find some stuff along the way. But get that kit list, get an idea about where you need to be, what you've got right now, and then you can just put in the hours and get there over time. Hopefully that's what you were looking for.
Yeah, that's really, really tactical. I think on the kit list, there's been a few times where I've been seeing the bikes drive past us, and it's some lads are like, "Oh yeah, that's about quarter to half a mil just on the road there." And I was like, "What?" It's like, okay, so it can get a bit costly. It can get a bit expensive, but I guess there's ways around that as well. Jake, this has been super, super valuable, and I think there's been a lot of take homes for those that are definitely looking at potentially doing something like an Ironman or trail run. Before we go, where can people find you if they want to know more about this talk?
So if you are interested in like the rugby strength and conditioning side of things, it's Caradoc Conditioning. You can see my name on there. If you just want to check out like my own progress or a bit of like more endurance stuff, triathlon or general coaching, lifestyle training, then it's coach_Jake.c, I think, or Coach Jake C. You'll find it.
I'll drop him in the show notes anyway.
Thank
so
you
can head to there to kind of
it's a new account, so I can't remember.
But yeah, no, on that kind of almost personal, it's like your own journey account, like coaching account. I think it's been an insight to me because something that I haven't looked at, and it's been really cool to see kind of what it's almost like a lens into what this actually looks like in your kind of training week. So if someone's interested, definitely go and give that a look in. Jake, thank you so much for taking time to jump on today.
Pleasure's all mine.
We'll have to get you back on when you finish.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure there'll be some things, especially if people have listened to it or you've got any interest and people are interested.
Oh, 100%. Catch you in a bit. And thanks to Jake for taking his time out of his busy training schedule to jump on and give us some performance gems, all things endurance. Be sure to check out his socials in the show notes below. If you're an everyday athlete looking for one-to-one support with your physical development, becoming stronger, fitter, faster in a matter of months, be sure to book in a strategy call on our website. That's samihussain.com. Alternatively, drop me a message on Instagram. That's @coach_Sami Hussain. Until next time, I'll see you soon.